In a week dominated by political turbulence, South African leaders President Cyril Ramaphosa and economic freedom fighters, EFF, leader Julius Malema have found themselves at the epicenter of a swelling international firestorm. A wave of global backlash has erupted over a series of bold decisions and controversial statements made by the two political figures, decisions that have not only intensified domestic division but have also ignited diplomatic tensions with several key international partners. The recent diplomatic crisis began when President Ramaphosa reaffirmed South Africa's commitment to what he termed a balanced, independent foreign policy, distancing the nation from traditional Western allies and leaning more assertively toward Russia and China. The move was formalized through a high-profile BRICS summit address in which Ramaphosa criticized Western sanctions regimes, expressed solidarity with Palestine, and called for the restructuring of global institutions to reflect multipolar realities. While domestically, this was seen by some as a bold assertion of African sovereignty, foreign governments were far less forgiving. The United States, United Kingdom, and European Union quickly issued statements condemning what they perceived as South Africa's troubling alignment with autocratic states. American lawmakers even floated the idea of reviewing South Africa's inclusion in AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act, a decision that could jeopardize billions in trade and economic investment. Ramaphosa's rhetoric surrounding Israel, in particular, drew sharp rebukes from Western and Middle Eastern media outlets. Several Israeli officials called the South African president's language irresponsible and inflammatory, especially after he likened Israeli actions in Gaza to apartheid-era oppression. In a rare diplomatic move, the Israeli ambassador to South Africa was recalled for consultations, escalating tensions further. If Ramaphosa's foreign policy stance ruffled feathers, Julius Malema's actions set them ablaze. Just days after Ramaphosa's controversial speech, Malema hosted what was described as a Pan-African anti-imperialist rally in Johannesburg. There, Malema lambasted the West, praised Vladimir Putin, and called for the immediate nationalization of all foreign-owned land and industries in South Africa. His fiery rhetoric, including direct calls for economic liberation by any means necessary, sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and business communities alike. Several multinational corporations reportedly began re-evaluating their investment positions in South Africa, while the European Union issued a rare statement urging South African authorities to rein in extremist populist rhetoric that threatens global partnerships. Malema also drew heavy criticism from African leaders after appearing to support military takeovers in several West African nations, referring to them as liberation victories against colonial puppets. This triggered backlash from ECOWAS and the African Union, both of which condemned Malema's remarks as irresponsible and damaging to continental unity. In response to the escalating rhetoric and uncertain political climate, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange experienced a noticeable drop as investors reacted to fears of sanctions, trade barriers, and increased volatility. Foreign direct investment, a vital lifeline for South Africa's fragile economy, is now under serious threat. In Washington, think tanks and economic analysts are warning that South Africa is in danger of isolating itself from the international financial system, drawing parallels with the trajectory of Zimbabwe in the early 2000s. Meanwhile, Beijing and Moscow have welcomed the developments, offering to strengthen strategic partnerships, a shift that many analysts argue could permanently redefine South Africa's global role. As global backlash mounts, the South African government has remained defiant. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya stated that South Africa will not be bullied into submission by former colonial powers, while Malema tweeted that economic slaves will never understand the price of freedom. But beneath the surface, tensions are rising. Civil society groups, trade unions, and even some ANC members are warning that the growing global outrage could have real consequences for South Africans, particularly the poor and working class who would bear the brunt of sanctions or economic isolation. International observers are now watching closely to see if South Africa will double down on its current course or seek a diplomatic off-ramp to ease tensions. Either way, the actions of Ramaphosa and Malema have cast the nation into uncharted diplomatic waters, with global alliances, economic stability, and South Africa's international image hanging in the balance.